This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hello and welcome to the Extra Point Podcast. My name is Anna. I'm the youth pastor here at Southridge Church. Joined with us this morning is our lead pastor, Scott Beha, and we just started a brand new series called Hills to Die On. In this series, we're talking about some non-negotiables of our faith. Specifically, Southridge Church is a part of a movement called the Church of God movement, and within that, there are some specifics, hills to die on, other things we can have conversations about, but there's some things where we say, hey, look, this is some bottom line issues that we all need to take into consideration when it comes to our faith and our faith journey. And today we are going to be diving deep into week 1, which was the supremacy of Jesus. Jesus is King, Lord of our life, all these things. A lot of times I think folks look to Jesus as like the superhero, come in and save the day, and then we send him a thank you card. And there's just so much more than just that. So, Scott, just give us a deep dive, debrief on what it means to have Jesus as supreme.
Yeah, so the challenge for yesterday was that I just think most people, and I'm probably as guilty as anyone, do not have Jesus in the proper place of their life. And I think the way that we get him there is to fully understand who he is, what he has done, what he's currently doing, and what he will do. That's kind of what we see laid out in Colossians chapter 1 in this early church hymn that's normally titled like the Supremacy of Christ, where it's just talking about his position over all things, who he is, and all the things he has and is doing. And so I think when we fully understand who Jesus is, then we make the jump to, well, then if that's who he is, then the only thing that makes sense is for me to orient my life around him rather than trying to have my life and then him kind of be a part of it, but not like the main part of it. And so I think we are required intellectually, if we're going to be honest, to go, all right, Colossians 1:15 tells us things like Jesus of Nazareth, he wasn't just a God, he is the God. He is the supreme being over all creation. He was the agent of creation. He has faced death and rose again. He's the sustainer of all these things that we hit yesterday on Sunday. And he goes, all right, if that's really who he is, well then it's kind of silly. Like I think where I'm getting at in my faith journey and in my ministry journey is to see it's sort of ridiculous that we had this like cultural movement over the last like 50 to 100 years probably, especially here in the West. That like a lot of times we call it like cultural Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it's like, back in the day, people just went to church because everyone in town went to church.
Right.
Whether they believed it or not, whether they followed it or not, whether they were actually living it or not, like just everybody just went to church. Like, and so like the whole like Jesus thing is just like part of everybody's life.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when you really get that clear picture that Paul is painting in Colossians chapter 1, you go, well, that's just silly. That's really not an option.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, oh, it's like just like a little bit of Jesus and then all the rest is all me. It's a silly notion how we ever got to cultural Christianity. And I think one of the things I've always tried to do in ministry is like push people like, look, I think that you should be either all the way in or all the way out because nothing else makes any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me for like, hey, I'm going to show up at church like once every 2 months and I'll read my Bible, about 2 or 3 times a year. I'll show up at it just doesn't make sense to me.
That would be a more painful lifestyle. Like I feel like you're splitting yourself in half in a way. Like it just isn't realistic when it comes to some of the ways that Jesus specifically when some of the things like Jesus showed for us to give up your own life to be with me. Like, that kind of stuff is so painful to say, hey, look, I have to give up what I want, what I need for this, but I don't really believe it. Like, it's such
silly.
A contradiction, and I imagine many people experience the turmoil of that within themselves.
Like, for me, if I wasn't going to take my faith I mean, not serious like, oh, I'll go to church. Like, I mean serious, like
Mm.
laboring every day of like trying to be who God created me to be.
Yeah.
If I wasn't going to do that, I'm telling you, I would be a heathen of
Mhm.
epic proportions.
Mhm.
Like I'm not joking. Like, I mean, I would be untamable.
Yeah.
Because that for me, that's the two options.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I would just be an absolute disaster and like menace to society,
Yeah.
or I want to go all in with it. Because like the whole idea of like just like, oh, just yeah, I'm just like a good person that goes to church, but like at the end of the day, the things that Jesus has to say really
Mm.
doesn't like influence me at all. Like I just go like, that's just silly. Like
Yeah.
that's not an option. Like I would be a heathen of epic proportion. Like
Yeah.
you would see, like you would know around town, it would be that ridiculous how
Yeah.
much I would live for myself
Yeah.
if I wasn't serious about my faith.
Yeah.
And again, none of that like is to say like, oh well, it sounds like Scott's got it all together. Like,
Right.
no. I've been messing up as much as anybody.
Yeah.
But it's like because I'm serious about my faith, that's why it cuts so deep whenever I do fall short.
Yes,
That's how
right.
you know that it's the real deal. So I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, people that have struggles and sin and messed up and fall short. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people that like literally like you are just someone else.
Mhm.
167 hours a week, but like 1 week, 1 hour a week, like
Mhm.
every like it's like I don't know. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Or even I mean, some people probably show up for church every week and still live like that.
Yeah.
Like because they were raised in a culture that goes like, yeah, this is the goal. Just come fill a seat on the weekend,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't really matter, what you do the rest of the week, and you check the Christian box, and I go like when you see the supremacy of
Yeah.
Christ, you go, that's just I don't know how we ever got to that, to be honest. I don't know how anyone ever intellectually went, yeah, that's probably possible. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That we could just have Jesus on the side. I go, that's just not what Paul is talking about here. That's not the testimony of Scripture.
Mhm.
It's just I don't know. It for me, it's a ridiculous way to live life.
Yeah. I think in this like context to see the difference in our lives, to see, hey, this is the way I live for myself. This is what life looks like when Jesus is supreme. Those moments of inner conflict, or where
Mhm.
things seem like it's almost red flags. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I keep doing this thing that I know if Jesus was supreme, I wouldn't be doing. Those are really amazing little opportunities to
Yeah.
say, oh my gosh, like I am making something else supreme. And sometimes that can be family,
Yeah.
like we talked about. Sometimes that can be work. It can be other things
Yeah.
that are supreme over our life. And we see that whenever the outcome or
Yeah.
the byproduct is not it's not Jesus. It's not
Yeah.
what Jesus would be doing in our
Mhm.
life if he were the supreme over it. So some of those things that you brought up, I think that was those can be tense moments to hear,
Oh yeah.
but they're critical.
Yeah.
So when we consider people taking their next step from a teaching like this, what does that look like, or what other thoughts might you have for people looking to do that?
Yeah, like so this is like a prime example, and I brought it up yesterday in both services. Is like in verse 16, Colossians 1:16, says that Jesus created all things visible, invisible, like everything was created through him. And then it goes on, it says even things such as thrones, kingdoms, rulers, authorities, even in the unseen world. So like all power and authority and everything like that is subject to Jesus. And yet, like you have these like God and country type Christians that put so much stock in what's happening politically here in America.
Right.
And you go, yeah, but because you seasoned it with Jesus, you think that you're out here being like Jesus's like bodyguard out in the political realm, and it's like really what you're doing is you are sacrificing your witness to be on the right side of politics.
Right.
It's just like, and so we fool ourselves into that. We go like, no, I'm fighting for the things that the Bible's talking about. I'm fighting for. It's like, yeah, but you're also like, you're not fighting for like love, mercy, peace, kindness. Like you're only fighting what you mean is you're fighting for the things that the Bible talks about that you like, while also just turning a blind eye to all of this other stuff. And so like that's like one example of you go like of how tricky this whole balance is. Like people that would go, oh no, I'm doing this because Jesus is so important to me. And I go, I don't know, man. I don't know that you can be this wrapped up in American politics and to the point where you will just slander half the country with one tweet or Facebook post or whatever, share an article that literally just maybe, oh, it's not my words, I'm just sharing what, they like, come on, man. Like at that moment, like it's hard for me to say, oh yeah, no, Jesus is the most important thing in your life whenever you will just disregard the most basic thing in that. And so like that was one of the things I want to point out yesterday. Like these people are getting fooled into thinking that they're out here like fighting the good fight when it comes to American politics. When it goes like, listen, don't you understand that all of that authority, all that power and everything is under Jesus? And so as wrapped up as you might be, and sure, I'd like to see certain things happen in my country. I'm not saying that there's not a place for that. I'm just saying like when you get to the point where you will sacrifice your witness for it, then something is more important than Jesus in that moment. And look, I have my own version of that. Like, like, for me, I have a very hard time with like keeping my cool intact when it comes to my kids, and a lot of that comes from my own ego. Right, I don't want to. I don't want people to perceive me as like not a good parent or whatever it might be. So I'm like super hard on my kids or something like that. And for me, I go, oh, well, no, I'm trying to raise my kids up right. And he goes, no, actually, you might be screwing them up for life because of your stupid ego, right? And so, like, I've got my own version of that. Like, I'm not trying to rail on people that have that. I'm just saying when that's the case, you have to realize, like, something else is the center of your life, right? When it's like, oh, yeah, man, we just, haven't made much time for faith in our family this year because things have been so busy with work. Like people will say that as if that's like a legitimate excuse, and you go, no, don't you see? Like when you say that, you tell on yourself to go, no, what you meant to say was something is more important in your life than your relationship with Jesus. And that's what it is. We all might have that, and I'm just saying, the more that we can orient our lives around the supremacy of Jesus, the better it's going to go for us. Like, we're not going to have so many of those moments where we live for ourselves and act foolishly. And at the end of the day, anytime that we do end up doing that, like, if you have any bit of the Spirit inside of you, that will at the very least drive you insane. It will drive you crazy to know. Like, this morning, I failed miserably as a parent, and I failed miserably. And so now I'm miserable because I've got the Spirit in me to go, yeah, you screwed up, dummy.
Yeah, right.
So for me, I couldn't go post like, how dare all these conservatives or how dare all these liberal, like, because if I did, I would just end up miserable every time I did it. And, like, so I can't do that because I know every time that I fail and lose my crap on my kids, this is how I get to feel. I get to feel that like that sorrow for doing something wrong. And I know that's God inside me. So I go, like, you can't, like, like something has to give in that regards. Because I'm not sitting here trying to say either, oh, you messed up, so therefore God's not the center. It's not whether you mess up or not that decides whether God's the center or not. It's like overall, what's just the whole trajectory of your life? Like, are you like really serious about this, or did you just like adopt some new habits? But it doesn't like, are you spending your money differently? Are you spending your time differently? Are you more giving of yourself? All these things over a long period of time. Are those things actually changing? If so, Jesus probably towards the center of your life.
Yeah.
If the only thing that's different about you is that you've made time for church every once in a while, join a club.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, do something else. Like, that's not really an option. It's intellectually dishonest. I don't get it whatsoever. Given what we see in Colossians chapter 1.
Yeah.
I don't understand it because the supremacy of Jesus just demands an all-in or all-out approach. Yeah. And that's really, I don't know if I got that conveyed in both services like I wish I would have, but that's really what I was going for. It's like just today's the decision day. Like let's not play games anymore. Like there's other stuff to do in life than play spiritual games. Like either go all in or go all out is kind of my message.
Yeah. So if you are tracking with us through this series, Hills to Die On, there's going to be more conversations about these things that are non-negotiables, things that we should really consider and take serious in our faith journey. Really, if you're catching this after this series or before this series, go back, finish it up, keep on track with it, because this is the start of it. In my opinion, I think this is the most important place to start, because this is the start. All the things we're going to talk about after this, if this isn't there, those things are just good suggestions.
Yeah, week 2 is going to follow right up with this. We're going to talk about the fact that, we are people of the Word. We have a high value of the Holy Scriptures.
Right.
And so I think where I'm leaning with this is like Jesus has multiple instances where he'll go, if you really love me, you'll do what I say.
Yeah.
Like, if you really, and so we're going to follow right up with all this supremacy of Christ. He's got to be in the center to go, all right, here's a good test.
Yeah.
If you really love me, do you actually do what I say? Do you see God's word as the guiding principle in your life or not? Yeah. Right? So all of this is going to keep building, because then we're going to get to holiness and all of this stuff. Right. And he goes, the only way you get there is if you get all this stuff on the first couple of weeks. Right, so it's all going to build. So, make sure that you stay up with it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Extra Point podcast. We want to encourage you, no matter where you find yourself in your faith journey, find that next step. Jesus is available. He's ready, and he's wanting to be supreme in your life. Do not give up on that, because he has not given up on you. Find him today. Figure out what the next step is. If there's any way we can help you, we'd love to do that. Make sure you subscribe, share this episode with someone who might need it, rate and review, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.